Welcome to Research Matters, an online show that is all about communicating the research taking place at NUST in efforts to promote the university's research agenda and the impact thereof.
That is right. Welcome to yet another episode of Research and Innovation Matters, a podcast by the Directorate of Research, Innovation and Partnership right here at the Namibia University of Science and Technology. Now for this episode, we feature Professor Ajayi, an associate professor in Geoinformation Technology and principal investigator of the Geospatial Intelligence Research Lab. Now, Professor Ajayi's work stands at the intersection of science, technology, and sustainability, using tools such as remote sensing, GIS, and machine learning to address challenges in climate resilience, disaster risk reduction, and urban transformation. Now, this is a very well-rounded introduction to Professor Ajayi. Welcome again, and thank you for joining us on Research and Innovation Matters right here on NUST FM.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. Now, Doctor, perhaps we can just begin with you telling us about your research journey and how you became so involved in geospatial intelligence and most specifically remote sensing as well.
My academic journey began in 2013 when I joined the service of the Federal University of Technology, MENA, in Nigeria as a graduate assistant. Mm-hmm. There's a culture in the university there that retains top graduating students. If you can make a first class, it becomes quite easy to be retained. And of course, I studied surveying and geoinformatics, surveying. So I'm a surveyor as much as I'm a geospatial expert. In surveying, there are a couple of branches. So for my bachelor's degree, it was natural for me to gravitate towards remote sensing, which is one of the branches of surveying. We have geodesy, hydrography, photogrammetry, GIS, then remote sensing, astronomy, a couple of branches. But it was easy because when you realize that you do quite well in remote sensing modules, in GIS modules, photogrammetry modules, so naturally I tilted towards naturally. Then of course providence, because I struggled quite a lot in my bachelor's project. Yeah. Making a decision, you think you can do everything, so you start doing this. After 3 weeks, you drop it and pick something else. After 2 weeks, you drop it and pick something else. So that's how I found myself in remote sensing. And in fact, my supervisor had to sit me down and say, "You do this." And as I did the project, because I believe I could do that project. So I did the project, and then the interest came up. So in 2013, I started lecturing, and I started my master's immediately at the University of Lagos in Nigeria. And I went for photogrammetry. PhD, of course, again, I went for UAV and digital photogrammetry. And then from that moment, I started developing interest for UAV, for automated systems, for remote sensing tools. And then I landed in geospatial intelligence. So since 2015, I've been working with drones, with UAV, and then around 2019, 2020, I started doing quite a lot on geospatial intelligence, using remote sensing as a tool.
Perhaps I can just take you a little bit back, because we've gotten so much into where you are now, right? Yeah. And yes, a little bit of where you started. But did you always know that this was where you would end up? Geospatial as a grade 12 or level 12 student, you just knew that, this is the career path I want to go into, and research would then become your passion.
Okay. My dad is a surveying expert, is a surveyor. So naturally, that should make me want to be a surveyor.
Naturally.
Right, naturally.
Or is it influence, Professor?
Unfortunately, my mom was not in support of that. So, and personally, I didn't want to do it. Yeah. Because I'd been to the site with him like 2-3 times, and I wasn't really liking it. It wasn't just me, But somehow, I was going for my diploma. I didn't want to go for diploma but my parents wanted me just to get admission and leave the house. Yeah. So I opted for surveying at the last minute because I thought admission had already closed. And even if I should be admitted, I can tell my parents that registration has closed. So unfortunately, the admissions officer said, even though it has closed, you have to do this program. We break the rules for you. You register for it. You go. So I just believe that surveying looked as though that's where I'm supposed to be. Same also with research and lecturing. I never wanted to be a lecturer till my year 5, because of course in Nigeria, bachelor's in geoinformatics is 5 years together with honors. Okay. So So to year 5, I never wanted to be a lecturer. You know, lecturers will come and say, you'll be a lecturer. I say, I reject it. You are one of our best students. We're going to be a lecturer. Oh, I reject it.
Look at you now.
In fact, I remember a colleague came to me and said, please, let's pray together because I really want to be a lecturer. And I was praying for him. And it was so clear that I'm going to be a lecturer. Yeah. And I rejected it again. But somehow, providence, divine, I found myself in lecturing.
Oh, wow.
So it wasn't as though I was going to be a geospatial expert from the beginning. I'd wanted to study mining engineering. Yeah. But I personally decided to go for surveying and geoinformatics, believing that it was already too late, not knowing that it was right on time. Yeah. And then here we are.
Oh, wow. Such a beautiful story.
Now, Prof, on this cold Tuesday morning, to some of our listeners who might not know some of these terminologies like GIS, remote sensing, and so forth and so on, can you break them down so that it's a bit more understandable, but also explain how they better us as humans or better us as people, or how that information can best advise our day-to-day life?
Yeah. The word GIS in itself means Geographic Information System. Some use the term Geospatial Information System. And in a very simplified way, I think it's best described to those who are not technical as the science of something that is somewhere at a particular time to a certain volume. So something is somewhere in a particular time or at a particular time, and this is the volume of that thing. Okay. So we all exist in space. All of us here now, you moved probably from your residence. Definitely you didn't sleep here, so you moved from your residence to the studio. Yes. You moved in time. You moved in space. The ability to locate, to position, or to track your movements from home down to this place is an expression of GIS. There are instances where you're driving and your Google map tells you, oh, there's traffic on so routes. That's GIS working. It's telling you that there is an obstruction, and you can still take it, but your travel time will increase, and you may need to use your time for something more important. So that's GIS. So in everything we do, actually, GIS is applicable in virtually every field. Okay. So, and that's what we do, and that's why you see that we apply GIS to virtually everything, and that's why we usually say that GIS in itself is ubiquitous, in the sense that it's relevant to virtually everything. So to the layman, it's just a study of something that is related to the Earth surface. So we're trying to model the Earth surface, either it is positioning or the volume of something above the Earth surface, beneath the Earth surface, on the Earth surface. That's basically what we do.
Okay. Now, when we're talking about your work and specifically through the Geospatial Intelligence Research Lab, what are some of the real-world challenges that you've been able to solve or still embarking on solving? But let's look in the context of Namibia particularly and in the African region.
Geospatial Intelligence Research Lab started in Namibia last year, so it's still pretty young here. Of course, I've been working with the research group for a couple of years in Nigeria, but we felt there is need for us to understand the local context here and then be able to provide a tailored solution to those problems. And that's what led to the birth of Geospatial Intelligence Research Lab. One, to solve this problem. Two, to serve as a platform for mentorship, for capacity development, for knowledge exchange, skill exchange. So we have 4 major tracks, or what we call thematic areas. The first one is climate modeling and its nexus with environmental issues, environmental degradation, land degradation, flood risk modeling, drought modeling, and things related to the environment. The second track is on precision agriculture, where we look at crop health, crop type, crop yield modeling, more like just developing a support system, an automated support system for improved agricultural productivity. The third one is on sustainable and smart transportation, where we develop tools for traffic modeling, vehicle tracking, and things, mobility generally, and things related to that. And the fourth one, which is the last focus group we have, is on mapping and urban modeling. Of course, mapping, because my background is geomatics, so naturally we must do some mapping. So because we believe also that is the base for virtually every development. So these are the major thematic areas we're focusing here in Namibia. The goal is to have better information as far as climate change is concerned so that we can develop a climate resilient society, and then to be able to develop, to provide information that can enhance the development of disaster risk preparedness, and to be able to provide sustainable planning, framework for sustainable planning for our environment.
Okay.
So that's what we do currently.
That's
and the
brilliant.
beauty of it is that most of these tracks are actually led by bachelor's and honors students.
Oh.
So we do catch them young. We recruit right from year 2 bachelor students, and then we begin to groom and mentor them into research. And then that's where we are.
That's a great initiative.
Yes.
And I think it's just taking off from what you've just mentioned, and obviously you've written extensively on drought and flooding, and as you're mentioning the students that you have on board and catching them young, which specific applications are used, and is there any visible impact so far with regard to either land degradation or flood modeling, amongst others?
We do quite a lot of coding, geospatial programming, geospatial coding. In fact, I currently take geoinformatics, programming for geoinformatics, and GIS programming in the department. So we use tools that helps in automating systems. And then, of course, the fundamentals of mapping, of spatial framework development, and things related to that. In terms of impacts, we publish quite a lot scientifically, and beyond that, we also try to condense the scientific publications into non-technical formats for citizenship education, and that's why you see that we write opinion, perspective pieces in national newspapers within and outside Namibia, because we believe that if we do quite a lot scientifically and we're not informing the citizens who are not as scientific as we are, then we are only speaking to ourselves. We need to communicate to the people, policymakers, users, and everyone. So further in terms of impact, of course, many of the things we do, they have direct and indirect impact. In many cases, when someone stumbles on your write-up and they make policies based on that, they don't have to invite to inform you. But there are instances also where you're informed. For example, last year, I got to know by research that about 1.4 million Namibians are liable to food insecurity because of drought. So I started writing extensively on drought. Around May 22nd, thereabouts. In fact, a week after my last piece on drought, the president declared a state of emergency on drought. Okay. And then a framework to provide relief system was developed that should last from July last year till 30th of June this year. I remember that I was also invited by, I can't remember now, one of the television stations. Yeah. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it, but I'm just saying that some of these things we do, they actually gain attention beyond the campus, beyond the research community, all right, to those who are also seeing that, oh, these are major issues, and then they should be solved. But for me, the most prime impact is to see the kind of future researchers we're building. Yeah. Because if you can replicate what you do in younger people, then it means that what you're doing makes sense. So beyond the immediate impact in terms of our society, I feel that the long-term impact is the fact that we create opportunity for mentorship, for skill acquisition, and then we can see the results in seeing your students doing very well. I remember I couldn't make it for that interview, and I called one of my students, who was at that time was a bachelor student, to go and stand in for me. And they did. Yeah, of course they couldn't, because they were already there just as we are here when the minister called and then the state of emergency was declared. It was basically to go and advocate for the need for state of emergency to be declared. So because it was as important as that. So for me to have that confidence to send my students to go stand for me on the national television to speak on topical issues, it means that we are doing something. It means I can trust him. It means we've impacted into him significant knowledge, significant confidence, and for me, that's the best impact.
I think that brings us to our next point of departure, which is basically the attention that you've gotten, and this is in regard to the Established Researcher of the Year 2024. Oh my gosh, Professor, congratulations.
Ooh, thank you.
All right, so obviously we're looking at how NUST is celebrating 10 years of research impact. Now, what does this established Researcher of the Year 2024 mean to you, and how do you see your work contributing to the university's legacy?
For me, universities are designed to generate knowledge and to advance knowledge to promote improved societal development. For NUST to recognize and celebrate researchers, not just Researcher of the Year, for me, is a very commendable initiative, because it takes quite a lot to get down with research.
It does.
Quite a lot to, and there are so many unsung songs in research, because people only see what has been published. They don't know that the journey to that publication may take 2 years. I've had instances where one paper took more than 2 years, one article took more than 2 years under review before it was published. So for me, I think when you're doing your best, and then the institution that you are loyal to sees that best and they recognize it, is something very important. But most importantly, I think it also shows that there is a strong emphasis that is placed on research as a vehicle for societal development at NUST. It means that NUST has gravitated towards becoming a research institution, which we are supposed to be. So for the Researcher of the Year, both for the faculty and the institution, for me, it's a recognition of our input, our little modest contribution to advancing science. Not just for myself, because I work as a team. The award is not for me, it's for my team. And not just for my team also, because I also stand as a representative of other researchers at NUST. So it's just a privilege to be the one standing there to represent others. I think that it shows that, one, research is gaining momentum. Two, NUST has evolved over the past 10 years. We are growing in leaps. And of course, we still continue to grow. Three, it means that researchers at NUST have quite a lot to contribute, not just to the development of Namibia, but to the development of Southern Africa, of the world at large. For me, personally, what does this mean to my work? If I believe that to whom much is given, much is not just expected, much is required. So it becomes mandatory for you to bring much more. So the award has set me up.
You cannot get comfortable now.
It has set me up to keep doing much more.
Absolutely.
All right. Of course, I'm not under any pressure, but it just means that I need to model that excellence to my students, to my mentees, and let them know that they can be the best in whatever they want to do. And I told them when the award came that it's not just for me, it's for them. I've been telling you can be the best. You can, anywhere you are there to be the best. And I told them this came because of what you did. I only went there to stand in for you to represent it, to pick it up. So the award is for all of us. It sits in my office, and they have free access to my office, so it's for all of us.
Can I come get it and just like...
Absolutely. So far you're going to pay some renters for it. But that's how we see it. And it reinforces our conviction to keep doing much more.
Absolutely.
To keep contributing to science, to the development of our institution, the development of Africa, to stand as worthy ambassadors of NUST everywhere we get to.
All right. Now, this calls for a point of celebration, so I'll get the listeners to listen to this jam. It's titled Shake It Off by Tyler Swift. So in the meantime, listen to this and we'll be back. Shake off the winter breeze, and we'll be back on the flip side.
And I think it's safe to say that it's only you, Unda, who is shaking it off in the studio.
Yeah, it just feels like everybody's holding on to that cold winter feels instead of just shaking it off and, getting warm inside and having a good day.
Well, it's warm in the studio and we're not too sure what's waiting for us outside there. So we're trying to reserve all form of energy for,
for the outside.
For the outside. Now, we are back on the flip side, and this is Research and Innovation Matters with Unda and Nigel.
Yeah.
Unda, you didn't introduce me at the beginning of the show.
Oh,
what was
Nigel.
up with that?
It's because you and I are the same person. So, when I started, I just thought, Dios me bra,
Okay.
We're the same.
No, I feel you 100%. Now, for those that are joining us now, we are joined in the studio by Prof Ajayi, who is indeed the Associate Professor in Geoinformation Technology and Principal Investigator of the Geospatial Intelligence Research Lab. Now, before the break, apologies for that, we're talking about all matters related to geospatial intelligence as well as
GIS and all the systems that go into this research and this type of work. So that's what we're talking about, Nigel.
100%. Thank you for bailing me out.
Mapping and all these interests.
All right. So, Prof, back to you. I think there's always an element that we need to figure out or address when it comes to research as well as policy, and how we can influence that. Maybe you can just touch on us on how you think we can either bridge that gap, or in what areas your research has either influenced local or national decision making, or in what areas it can actually help with decision making and policy making in the future.
Thank you very much, Nigel. Earlier, I spoke about one of our very pivotal work, which is on drought. So I'll just focus now on how research can influence policy making.
Yeah.
I'm an advocate of local impacts. We do quite a lot, up there scientifically doing fantastic, but our work will not translate into anything reasonable if we only speak to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
As researchers, we must make conscious effort to ensure that we can step down the scientific findings of our research endeavors, research activities, in such a way that those who are not in the technical fields of our specialization can make sense out of what we are working on. And that is why in our group, we have this policy of when you have a publication, a scientific publication, then we also need to condense it and convert it to an opinion piece in a very short form that can be published probably in magazines, in newspapers, so that the citizens can also be educated. Politicians who are mostly in charge of policy making, even though we believe that technocrats are the ones driving the machine, but we know that all these things still ends on the desk of politicians, can get to see these things and be able to make informed decisions using them. So I see research as a vehicle for informed decision making. And if policies must be influenced by research, then we must take research to policymakers. We don't expect policymakers to come to the institution, especially here in Africa, to get our research findings. We have to go look for them, knock on their doors, and say, this is what we have done, this is how we are doing it. Probably there is a workshop, we invite them, that is, there are different fora, and we say, you come and see what we do here. And then they come, they listen, and say, this makes sense, it resonates with what I'm proposing. I'm going to present these in the next bill I'm sponsoring, and things like that. So we've done quite a lot of work that we see influencing policies, that are influencing national, regional, local decision making. But if we must scale this up and we need to keep pushing the bar, then we also need to make more conscious effort. I'm speaking to myself and my colleagues in the body of research to take what we are doing to the people, to the citizens, to the policymakers, and not to work in isolation. Publishing in journals and conference proceedings in books or as book chapters is beautiful. We do that quite a lot. But the question is, how many policymakers get hold of a book of proceedings or a technical book or a journal and said, I want to read this scientific journal to see what's new findings. It came out early this year. Let me see what are the barrier-breaking research findings that just came out this year. You rarely see that. But sometimes they could spend 5 minutes glancing through the pages of a newspaper. They could spend a few minutes, going through social media. So condensing your work, publishing on your LinkedIn page may be as impactful as publishing it in a journal. So we need to take these findings to the people in a way that they can easily comprehend it, they can easily make sense out of it. So we shouldn't just be talking to ourselves. We should also ensure that we are communicating with the people we are serving, because researchers are actually there to serve the people.
I think the most important one you mentioned to me now is that you cannot do research in isolation. You cannot have your work being in a vacuum where it's just you and the people you're trying to reach. Rather, so maybe we can then look at what are some of the academic, or who are some of the academic institutions that you've worked with, but also development agencies that make you realize these research goals that you have as a researcher.
I don't know how many I'm going to mention, but
you can just mention a few.
Of them. I've been with the University of the West of England in the UK.
Okay.
I've been with University of Pretoria, University of Cape Town, a number of them. But for me, the main thing is the impact of collaboration and partnerships. And it's always beautiful. Currently now we are developing proposals in collaboration with even Nottingham Trent University in the UK. We have colleagues, in many of these institutions. So collaboration is very not so difficult. It's very key.
Yeah.
But the new wave of collaboration actually is not just collaborating with fellow experts, but collaborating with the beneficiaries of your project. Initially, we see the people as just end users. So we come to them, we want to do this project.
Yeah.
Do you want it? We don't even ask them, do you want it? We just tell them, we want to do this project.
Yeah.
Oh, beautiful. Then we go back, we get the project done. We come back for execution. So we've done this project and the project is abandoned. There's something we call co-production of knowledge, co-generation of knowledge, which means that right from the beginning, from conceptualization of your research idea, the beneficiaries must be involved in the development of the idea.
Yeah.
And that is powerful collaboration. So they're part of it from the initialization down to development down to execution.
Yeah.
And collaboration generally, either it is with the local people or with fellow researchers, with corporate organizations, with funding agencies, with academic institutions, gives you more feathers, more wings to fly. If one can chase 1,000, two can chase tens of thousands, so if I can achieve A alone, I should be able to go to B, C, and D, E when I have people with like minds working with me. So collaboration gives you room for increased funding. There are projects you cannot apply for alone, no matter how beautiful you are as a researcher, no matter your depth of intelligence, no matter how voracious you are in consuming knowledge, in disseminating knowledge. You cannot apply for certain projects alone because even funders are looking for collaborative projects. So if you must get some big guns in terms of funding, then you need to have some great depth in terms of research partnerships and collaborations. Then when you collaborate with people, it gives you diverse perspectives. And that even with your students, at times I teach and I also call a student to explain what I've just explained. And the way they explain, you'll be wondering, where is this simplicity coming from? Where is this understanding coming from? And then you also learn from them. So when you collaborate with people, you tend to see things differently and it helps you to see things more holistically. There's some perspectives you can't see alone, but when someone else is seeing it, so when you write something, you give it to your friend to review, you can't review it yourself because you're not reading what is on the paper, you're reading what is on your mind. So you're jumping the errors as you're reading through your lines. But your friend who is dispassionate, who is not I'm emotionally attached to what you have written, reads and say, what is this? So when you have people working in your network, you can easily see things broadly. And that gives you improved opportunity for scalability. So, I'm talking about impact. Imagine you're doing a project here. Someone comes maybe from the west, someone comes from the east, from the south. You bring your local perspective into it. Is this to replicate that project in the east, to replicate it in the west, in the south, in the north, unlike when only the person in the north executed the project. So the impact, the funding, the knowledge generation, the network expansion, these are some of the benefits of what we get from collaborations.
Absolutely.
And it's true. I mean, collaboration brings in multiple heads and multiple skills, thoughts of thinking, as well as some interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary fields. How do you think then innovation plays specifically to STEM, as well as preparing Africa for the next decade of development? So preparing Africa, also preparing the Namibian community for the next level of development.
The next level of development for me in Africa is for us to migrate from being consumers of knowledge into producers, generators of knowledge. And if we must get to that point, then we must value the criticality of STEM. So we need to keep driving innovation in STEM because that looks like the future, is the lifeline on what all of us are dwelling on. Just a few decades ago, everything is manual, right? Everything is hardcore manual. Even to be in the lab, in the studio now, talking to people around the world seems to be quite difficult or near impossible. But now everything in the world is now in our pockets. Your mobile device, you have the whole world right there. It means that everything is evolving. And if Africa must catch up, we also need to keep evolving, if not at the current pace, at least at a near real-time pace with the current frequency of evolution in terms of technological development. So if Africa must, in the next decade, if Africa must remain must grow into becoming a powerhouse in scientific development, we must value innovation in STEM. Currently now, AI seems to be the reigning thing. That's not just a buzzword, but it's practically everywhere.
Yeah.
Either you like it or not, we use AI virtually every day.
Absolutely.
You're writing on your phone, typing something, it gives you suggestions of spellings. That's AI. Sometimes the suggestions are very wrong. They change completely what you have in your mind. But that's AI. So we can't run away from it. Over the next decade, everything will likely depend on STEM. Even the non-STEM disciplines will have to get their foundations on STEM. Now we have smart systems, smart societies, smart cities. You don't want to put off your power supply anymore. You want it to go off as a step out of the office. You want your water system to trip off as a step out of the house. You want your gate to shut itself. Smart systems, And if we must advance into becoming resilient as a continent, then we need to build resilient infrastructure. That will be based on STEM. If we must compete with our colleagues around the world, we need to give attention to STEM, because the future actually is competitive knowledge economy. And if we must thrive in that future, then STEM is the way to go.
Now, Prof, pardon me. We are nearing the end. So with this, I just want us to look at what advice you would give to a young scientist or a student who's just interested in mapping or research in itself. What would you tell them more specifically about applied environmental research or just Earth observation?
My first advice would be that, number one, should believe that you're smart, intelligent. You can be the best you set your heart on to be, only if you can be a little more disciplined. Then you must pay attention to the foundation of spatial methodologies. Of course, you must study a program that relates to mapping. Maybe you're doing geoinformation technology, geomatics, land information systems related to Earth observation. So you must ensure that your foundation in spatial theories and methodologies is well-grounded. Number two, which is the second leg of that foundation, will be to pay attention to programming. Programming makes your work easier. You can easily automate systems. So if you're here to start learning how to program, it's not too late. You're never too old to start learning how to program. Identify your favorite programming language and start learning how to program. Number three would be to develop interest in data analysis. We have what we call geospatial big data. And is very, very key into becoming a spatial expert, geospatial experts. So develop interest for data analysis, and these theories that you've mastered, learn to translate them in practical dimensions using real-world situations as your launching pad. Because our theories, our divide the X, all these things we do in the classroom theoretically, we only if they don't translate into practical expressions, they may not be very useful to us. So don't just master programming. Ask yourself, I can program, but what problem can I solve? What Earth observation related problem can I solve? What geospatial related problem can I solve? And then begin to lay your hands on solving them. Because nobody employs you because you have beautiful certificates. You're employed because you can solve their problems. If you can solve their problems, nobody cares, you'll be employed. So if we lay hands on, and of course, work as a team. Don't work as an island. Don't work alone. Learn to ask questions. Work in a team of people of like minds. Submit yourself for mentorship is important. And ask questions. Have a curious mind. Ask questions as much as you can. And my final advice would be to remember at all times that you're the best. You can be the best in whatever you do. I believe that there is no limitation to anyone. I believe that the color of your skin shouldn't be a limitation to you. Your background shouldn't be a limitation to you. The disadvantages surrounding your life should not be a stumbling block to who you are supposed to be. If you still desire to be that person and you are willing to get there. If you set your heart on it, what I'm saying is it's not too late to start, even if you're starting now. So maybe you're already in your 40s and you want to go back into spatial science, you can still go back into it. It's never too late. And like I usually tell my students, you're not inferior to anyone. I tell my students, I don't teach dull students. I teach for you to be in my class, by default makes you a bright student. So you now have to prove to me how bright you are, not how dull you are. So I think with this confidence in yourself, it means you can conquer anything.
Absolutely.
And if you are willing to put in the work, the confidence will help you to sacrifice enough to put in the work. And then even when the results are not forthcoming, you are still passionate to keep going. And then the results will keep coming.
Truly inspirational, Professor. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Unfortunately, this actually brings us to the end of our Research and Innovation Matters podcast. Prof, we really appreciate having you on the show this morning and talking to us about all things geospatial. I think all our listeners out there really have learned more than a thing or two and been inspired also to pursue a career of their choice. Thank you very much for being here.
All right, now to our listeners, thank you for tuning in like you always do. But don't forget to follow the Department of Research, Innovation and Partnerships online and subscribe for more of the episodes that showcase research driving change. Now, that brings us to the end. But don't forget, you can always keep up with all the episodes that we've posted already and then wait for this one as it comes out. Until next time, it is goodbye.